Alright, so before I show you the chart that you're supposed to be working on, I'm just going to introduce this little phrase here. It's called imperfect competition. So what we are talking about now, as we talk about monopolistic competition and oligopoly, are market structures where we have what we call imperfect competition, hence not perfect competition. Because we have either a difference in the variety or the number of firms, something that we have more than one firm, but we don't have all the components of perfect competition. So we call these imperfect competition. So let's take a look at this chart that I asked you to fill in. So I'm not going to spend too much time here. If you have a question about the characteristics of monopolistic competition, by all means ask me, but these are how it shakes out. Now, for similarities here, see, it's very similar to perfect competition in that there's many firms, and the barriers to entry are pretty low. Now, I want you to remember what this means, what this adds up to here. The fact that we have, there we go. The fact that we have perfect competition with many firms and barriers to entry that are low, that means we get entry and exit, right? I'm going to make this a little bit smaller here. So we get entry and exit. But what else does that mean? Because we had entry and exit, what happened in perfect competition in the long run? Think about those profits. Equal what? $0. So this is going to be one thing that holds true in monopolistic competition too. That since you have entry and exit, there's a lot of firms, they come and they go. The same rules apply when there's profits and losses. Firms enter and leave accordingly. So that's one thing to keep in mind in the back of your head here. Now, since there's some price control here, which is kind of similar to the monopoly, or at least in the sense that the monopoly, remember, if they wanted to sell more output, what they have to do? They had to lower their price, which is the same for monopolistic competition as well. And if you look at my two graphs now, you should be able to see the difference that comes about because the monopoly has some price control, whereas the perfect competition firm, perfectly competitive firm, has no price control. What's the major difference because of this one right here? Since there is some price control, this means that your MR is less than your AR. And this holds true for monopolistic competition. So you combine these two graphs here to get what your monopolistically competitive graph looks like. Let me pause for a second because I want to make sure I got the right. So if you think about the graph now, the major difference between the perfect competition monopoly graph is your MR and your AR here, right? The MC looks essentially the same and the ATC looks the same, which I don't have on here, and I'm going to trust you to put it on here for monopolies and perfectly competitive firms earning profit. You should know how to do that. But the difference between the two is MR versus here, where it's AR and demand, and in the monopoly, where they're two separate things. Well, for monopolistic competition, which graph is it going to look like? Well, they have some price control, and we talked about how the monopoly with some price control meant that the MR falls below the AR curve. So that means that your monopolistic competition graph is going to look a lot like a monopoly graph, which is, so here I've drawn a monopolistically competitive firm here. These are your cost curves for a monopolistically competitive firm. The only one that's missing is the ATC. Now, I want you to try here, so you should be able to draw, so essentially when you draw a monopolistically competitive firm breaking even, it'll look like a monopoly that breaks even. A monopolistically competitive firm taking losses looks like a monopoly taking losses. A monopolistically competitive firm making profits looks like a monopoly making profits. You should be able to draw at least these two here, where the firm is taking a loss or making profits. But this perfect competition, or monopolistically competitive breaking even, is tricky. All right? So I'm going to walk you through a little bit here. I don't have a ton of room on the bottom, which kind of stinks, but all right. So let's assume that this is a perfect, or a monopolistically competitive firm breaking even. That means that my total revenue and my total costs have to equal each other. So That means for this to be true, my price and my, I'm going to write this actually above it. My price has to equal my ATC, okay, for these two things to be true. Because if I multiply by quantity, P times Q, I get total revenue. If I do ATC times Q, I get total cost. So let me do this. I want to draw a few things on here for you. Where's my pencil? Okay. So let's do this. So we're MR equals MC. This is our quantity here, and I can't really label it, but it's down here. I don't have enough room on my screen. Now to find the price for this thing, I got to go up. So there's my AR equals my price. So I found my profit maximizing price. It's up here. And I went over. Okay. There's my price. Boom. So my price times my quantity. This space is my total revenue. Now the thing is that I need my average total cost to be the same as my price. So I know that my ATC curve has to go right here. It has to be here. This is where it gets tricky, and it's going to be, if you think it's tricky to draw on your paper, I urge you to try and draw this with a mouse like me here. So I'm going to make this dot really big here so that I can have some room for error. Alright? So now remember a couple of things. Your ATC curve has to do a few things. It has to hit the MC at its lowest point. So I have to have my ATC curve be at its lowest point here, but also hit here on my AR curve. So I gotta draw something that looks like this, and forgive me if I mess it up. Boom, not bad. And I'll just type this in now. Okay, so your ATC curve is tangent at this point to your AR curve. It hits in just one spot. And so this is really, really tricky to draw, is the bottom line here. But you can see my ATC curve hits at the same place where my AR and price are. So my total revenue equals my total cost. They're the same box here. They both are right here. And this is what a monopolistically competitive firm will do in the short run. I want you to go draw your losses and profits for monopolistically competitive firms. Remember, they're going to look just like monopolies doing the same thing. And then I'm going to talk to you next time about the long-run adjustments. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions. So you should be making these on your page number 1. Go.